We are good to go. So hello,
Right.
everyone. I'm Liz Lemke, and I am joined by my wonderful SOSU colleague, Erin, and she's going to take us through, because as we talked about, we love those Venn diagrams about how do these different communities come together, and she can give an awesome case study as to how this can help with learning. So with that, I turn it over to you, my dear.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Liz. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So hopefully you'll all be able to see that once I do so. All right. Are we good? Can you see the screen?
It is building up. It is building up. Hey, voila, we are here. Perfect. All right. So I will hide myself. Have fun.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. So just to give you a little intro about me, I was born in Milwaukee and I'm currently living in Darien, Illinois, which is a suburb of Chicago, and it's about 40 minutes outside of the city. And I am currently the talent sourcing manager at Maxar Technologies. And if you've never heard of us before, we're doing some really awesome stuff. We specialize in satellite imagery as well as space infrastructure. So we work a lot with NASA as well as a couple other commercial vendors that need satellite data, such as like Uber and Google Maps. And we are actually going to be part of Project Artemis, which will put the first woman on the moon in 2024. So we are very excited about all of that. I am married and I have 2 Alaskan Klekai. You might see them in the background here. They're basically mini huskies that act like cats, and they are a handful. And then outside of work, I am actually a competitive pole fitness and aerialist. So definitely have a lot going on there. So today what I'm going to take you through is what I like to call learning through osmosis. And you might be asking yourself, what exactly is osmosis? Well, there's 2 different definitions. So first you're going to get a chemistry lesson from me. The chemical definition is a process by which molecules of a solvent tend to pass through a semi-permeable membrane from a less concentrated solution into a more concentrated one, thus equalizing the concentrations on each side of the membrane. So you're thinking, okay, what does this have to do with learning and development in my career? So there's a second definition that makes a little bit more sense. It's the process of gradual unconscious assimilation ideas into knowledge, etc. So essentially, how can I surround myself with people that are really experienced and passionate about the work that they do so that knowledge will flow essentially into me? So I'm going to, go through a little bit of my story as well. And the thing to remember is that professional development can be overwhelming if you just don't really know where to start. But it's possible to make it nearly effortless through osmosis. So here's my story of how I came to learn by osmosis. And for the most part, it happened accidentally. So 3 years ago, I was working as a full cycle recruiter in healthcare. And go figure, I was a recruiter that came to hate recruiting. But there was one small bit of my job that I still looked forward to, and that was the sourcing function. So if you're not necessarily in talent acquisition, sourcing is where we go out and find passive candidates to fill roles instead of waiting for them to apply to them. And you may think, oh, well, that doesn't sound that interesting. Isn't it just posting things on Indeed and, looking for resumes? The function has become so much more than that. And through my journey of becoming more developed in this area, I learned just how much more advanced and how much more riveting it's become as well. So it all started with a conference that I really wanted to go to. It was SourceCon. So in my 3 years for working with that company, I had been asking my manager to go to SourceCon for years. And every time that I asked, they would say no. And then there came a day where we had a quarterly meeting as a team. And I found out that they were going to send a couple of people from our department to SourceCon. And I was not one of them that was selected to attend. So it was really an unexpected turning point in my career. And I was really upset that I wasn't chosen to go when I'd been asking to go for years. And instead of, staying angry about it, I decided I was going to go anyways. I didn't know exactly how I was going to get there, but the next day I walked into my boss's office and I said, I know I wasn't selected to go, but I am going to go with that group. I don't know how I'm going to make it happen yet, but I'm going to, and I will take vacation time if I have to. This was really all just because like I said, I had come to hate recruiting, but I loved that one small specialization within my job. And I thought maybe if I could go somewhere to learn a little bit more about it, this could create an opportunity for me in the future, whether it was with this company or elsewhere. So it didn't really start as, a means to develop myself as a better sourcer. It sort of was a means to an end. Maybe this would be my way out of full cycle recruiting because I was just miserable in that role. And maybe they would create a role for me in sourcing if I showed enough initiative. Instead, it became a catalyst that I was not expecting for my career. So the first phase of my osmosis, research and blogging. So I eventually did figure out a way that I was going to get to this conference that I so badly wanted to attend. I reached out to a couple of people that had attended in the past, and it turned out they were a really fabulous community that were willing and able to help me get there. It turned out that if you contributed 6 blogs to this media outlet, you could go to the conference free of charge, and then all you would have to pay for was your travel. So in doing this, I kind of didn't know where to start. But where I did start was sharing my story of what I've learned in my years of recruiting, and then also digging into topics that I didn't really know as much about, but I learned in that process. And then I shared with the community what I learned. From there, once my blog started actually running, I started to gain visibility within this learning community. And it was really something that was unexpected and an unintended consequence of, like I said, something that was a means to an end. So leading up to the conference, I started getting a lot of messages from different companies saying, we love what you have to say about sourcing. We'd like you to come work for us. And I was still very much holding on to the possibility of staying with my current company and hoping that they would open a sourcing position for me. And that was something that they kept kicking down the road and promising until finally I got sourced pretty much like 2 weeks before the actual conference, and I ended up going with another company. So that was a really interesting turn of events. But then when I actually got to the conference, I thought it was going to be a one and done kind of thing. Like I'd go once, learn what I needed to. But instead, I forged some really important relationships with mentors who really did become my friends. And I've made so many wonderful friends. And then that led in very much to this learning by osmosis. Sourcing pretty much became my life. And to some people, they might say, oh, well, your job's your life. Well, that sounds kind of sad. And really, it's not like that. It's gotten to the point where the people that I, have learned so much from in this community that have also been mentors to me. Whenever I see that they have a webinar going on or some sort of training, it's not just about going to learn new skills. It's almost like registering for it to cheer on a dear friend. And then in return, they do the same for me. So I had a sudden realization that I had become fully immersed. My osmosis was really taking place. This is what I noticed when I realized that I had completely become immersed in this world. As a sourcer, you have to be very skilled at advanced search in Boolean specifically. And whereas I used to struggle with this and knowing which operators are going to work where, suddenly it became muscle memory and not something that I consciously had to think of. I was discovering methods and hacks that my mentors hadn't seen, and I started sharing things with them and paying that back. And it was a really wonderful cycle to see. my feed on all channels, whether it was Facebook, LinkedIn, or even Instagram, suddenly became all about sourcing. So I didn't really have to work anymore to curate the kind of content that I was looking for whenever it came to professional development. And then learning and digging for me became much more of an obsession. And sometimes I'll even find myself just going down the rabbit hole after hours to see what I can uncover in terms of information and new and cool places to find people that aren't LinkedIn. So at this point, my process of osmosis was complete. When the student becomes the teacher, when I started sharing things with my mentors that they had never thought of before. And in 2 short years, I had gone from being a recruiter to a sourcing manager. I had gone from an attendee of a conference to a speaker. And these are all things that you can do as well. You know, a lot of times you think, well, these people are experts in their field. I could never be that. It's not as unachievable as you think. I became a mentor for a lot of new speakers as well. And I've really developed a drive to want to pay it forward. So how do you start your own journey of learning by osmosis? Identify what makes you nerd out. Maybe you're not that happy with the role that you currently have. Maybe you want to change course entirely. Figure out what it is that you're really passionate about, because at the end of the day, it's hard to get good at something when your heart's not in it. So for me, sourcing was the part of my job that made me nerd out. And then from there, find your nerd herd. Find the people that are going to lift you up, that are going to help you learn exactly what you want to. And then from there, contribute to that community, no matter how big or small. Pay it forward. You may think that, you know, does anybody really care what I have to say? Is it really going to matter? Maybe someone's already done this. You don't know until you share that. And there may be someone out there that's going to resonate with what it is that you share. So where should I look for a community? Where should I find my nerd herd? There's a lot of different places, but these are just a couple of examples that I would recommend. Conferences, obviously. This is where people come together to share new industry news, things that they've learned. This is where you can find a potential mentor. Blogs. So I got my start through blogging. And what you may not realize is that a lot of media outlets don't have a high barrier of entry to start blogging. A lot of times they need content and they need a lot of it. So oftentimes they're willing to let a lot of people have a voice that want to have one. Meetup groups. This is fantastic. Obviously, there's been a little bit less activity on Meetup, specifically with COVID-19. So a lot of those meetups are virtual. However, there's a lot of rich talent communities on that platform. Reddit talent communities. Anybody who knows me knows that I absolutely love sourcing talent on Reddit. There's pretty much a community for anything and everything that you could possibly imagine. There is one for sourcing. There's one for pretty much every segment of software engineering. There's ones for nursing, finance, pretty much anything. So you can go there, find advice, share information, and they're really wonderful and engaged groups to be a part of. So essentially, I'm going to stop sharing now. I hope that you were able to learn a little bit about what you can do to fully immerse yourself within a community. And I am ready to take questions.
Wonderful. I'm going to unhide myself. So awesome. I love it. So we were joking that we were back in 7th grade with our egg experiment, and I like your second definition better. That was awesome. So here, folks, what questions do you have? Because I think that, one thing that really resonated was this aspect about being strong for your own learning. So you're getting that bravery and understanding, here, what do you not want to wait for? Is there something else where you said, you've taken that initial lesson of having been waiting to now say, okay, as you've progressed, you gave more confidence to say, okay, here, what's that next step that I want to grab in terms of learning? Okay. So here, what sourcing recommendations would you make to companies placing instructional designers?
So that's something that I've never sourced for before. So I would have to take a look at a job description to figure out exactly where to look for those people. So
yeah,
I'm sure I'd have some ideas for you for sure, but it's just not something that I know.
Oh, really? You don't have all of the jobs in your head?
No, I'm not sourced for every single type of person.
Too funny. So this is a great one. Best advice on how to feel the fear but still move forward, especially when shifting into a completely new career. Wonderful question.
I think you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
And it's not even just a matter of well, it is a matter of just going out there and seeing what happens. When I submitted my first blogs to SourceCon, I go back and read them. And I'm like, how did they ever publish these? But that's how you learn, and that's how you grow. Exactly. You have to start somewhere.
Yep.
Nobody starts out as an expert, and that's okay. And a big part of that is also having people you trust within a community to bounce ideas off of as well. They may see some things that you weren't aware of, and that also starts the cycle of learning as well, with having people point things out that are learning opportunities for you and maybe them as well.
Absolutely. And through that exchange, you can build upon other ideas that, like you said, you didn't necessarily even think about. And that's one of the beauties of discussing with peers, but also just getting it out there in terms of ideas. So a good question here is, what are your own next steps in the sourcing world? So what are you challenging yourself with next?
Yes. So I'm glad you asked that. I am really trying to take a little bit more of a step back to work more behind the scenes when it comes to the sourcing community. I have someone on my team that works as a sourcer, and she's very much wanted to get onto the speaker circuit as well. She spoke for the first time at Sourcing Summit this fall, so we worked a lot together on her presentation. Now she's going to be speaking at SourceCon as well in a couple of weeks. And the topics that she's chosen have been a learning opportunity for her and majorly for me, because she's been doing a lot of research, and every time she, gets stuck, she's like, what do you recommend? And then I've learned more by helping people come up with their presentations, sometimes more than me doing research for things that I'm going to present. So it's really about nurturing the next generation of people that are going to be presenters, because a lot of times you might see at conferences, there's the same faces every single time. And you don't really want to get stuck in that cycle, because we want to hear new voices. And, we need people to be bold enough to do that too. You would be surprised at how hard it is to get someone to actually want to get up on a stage, whether virtual or otherwise. And it really does take courage in order to do that. So.
I couldn't agree more. And that's kind of the theme for this year. I know for me is welcome into the awesome is, we do these things. How can we get those first time or, people that we know who are doing awesome experiments, and then giving them the opportunity and not asking for, please show me the cadre of like 20 conferences you've already spoken at. Give me the video clips. Like, no. It's really that piece of, as we are all scrappy and learning, we can learn so much from each other and giving those opportunities. I love it. Okay.
Absolutely. So, once you get to a certain level, I do believe that there's a responsibility for industry leaders to step aside and make room at the table for new voices.
Couldn't agree more. And so therewith, You heard it both from Erin and me. If you want to be speaking, if you have something that you want to share, and you are a first-time speaker and you want a forum, okay, you heard it. All right. Well, that was awesome. Thank you so much, Erin. Always a pleasure. Glad you're in my world. And everyone, you know now how to connect with her. And those pieces, as you continue to grow, as you're learning via osmosis about those around you, and also challenging yourselves in different way, that's one of the beauties. And so that also goes to show social learning is a thing. It's not just a discussion group. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Absolutely.